general manager of the Los Angeles Rams, and he was the one who drafted Michael Sam, the 249th overall selection of the 2014 draft. He is Les Snead here on The Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Les?
I am good. How about you, Rich?
I am doing great. I'm sure you've heard about this story coming out of Philadelphia from Howard Balzer. Yes, you've heard about this story?
I did hear about that.
Okay. So he says, according to multiple sources, that the league agreed not to ask the Rams to appear that year on HBO's yearly summer series, Hard Knocks, if they drafted Sam. What do you have to say, Les?
Well, you know, that's interesting. I think in the NFL, in this business, there's many cogs in our wheelhouse. And maybe one of the most important is actually we're in the content business, and whether that's on Sundays or the behind-the-scenes looks of how you get to Sundays. And I know a lot of our fans, you know, really are craving that type of content. But, you know, another cog in our wheelhouse is the player acquisition business, and that's very important for that Sunday content as well. So I'm not sure you would ever, you know, really sacrifice, you know, especially the player acquisition part to basically, you know, avoid distributing content. So, hey, draft picks are very valuable. Late rounds, even when you guys on the NFL Network, you know, that's when you get the college coaches in, and you're filling airtime because the fans don't know as much about these picks. I'll take you back to 2012. We're debating about 3 players, and we got 1 pick left. Is it going to be Greg Zuerlein? Is it going to be Johnny Hekker? Is it going to be Rodney McLeod? And you try to figure out how you get all 3 of those guys with 1 pick. We end up taking Zuerlein with the 7th. He becomes a starting kicker. We get Hekker and McLeod in college free agency. Hekker goes on to become an all-pro punter. And Rodney McLeod, you know, great special teamer to our starting safety. And this year the Eagles sign him to a large contract. And we hopefully will get, you know, just thinking far ahead, a compensatory pick next year for losing Rodney. So that's how important those late-round picks are to us on the team side.
Sure. You know, in the 2014 draft, while we were tap dancing before the end of the draft, we were talking, however, with each pick, Les, who wasn't choosing Michael Sam, and would Michael Sam be selected, and what that would mean for the NFL if the co-defensive player of the year from the SEC was not selected. Did anybody from the league tell you in St. Louis, please draft Michael Sam? Did that happen?
Absolutely not. That is not true. I can say that. And I think you go back to Michael Sam in the 7th round. Obviously, he was co-defensive player of the year for one reason, and that was probably the all-important sack stat. He had a lot of sacks that year. And I think if you look at the draft, you know, over the course of time, guys with a lot of production, but then go and maybe don't have the measurables, whether it's in height, weight, speed, all that type thing, they usually fall. Guys who have a ton of measurables, but maybe not as much production, guess what? They usually fall too in the draft. And you can really, it's a big-time correlation between guys with production as well as the measurables that say, guess what, they can translate that to our league. They usually go earlier in the draft, and I think that's the case with Michael Sam. Is one of the reasons he's failed is because of the measurables. One of the reasons he's standing out that point in the board is the production.
So, and there's also in this piece, Les, pointing out as, I guess, evidence that there might have been some quid pro quo between the league and the Rams, is that Ethan Westbrooks was on your board. You didn't choose him, and then nobody else did choose him. And then he wound up getting a nice signing bonus to actually wind up, you know, where the Rams are signing him.
Good. That's good and good research, because that goes back to just as I mentioned from that 12 draft when we had the Zuerlein, Hekker, McLeod conversation. You have, you know, if it's the Michael Sam, Ethan Westbrooks, and there's other players as well in that. Okay, how can you get all the players you want? And a lot of that occurs before the draft, and that is when you bring guys in for top 30s, when you send coaches out for private workouts, and a lot of times it's for guys that are going to be in the late rounds or in college free agency. And if you can build a relationship with one of those players and he's not selected, you got a better chance of getting him to come to your team.
So I'm on the phone with Les Snead here on the Rich Eisen Show, the L.A. Rams general manager.
That sounds good.
I know it does. I'm sure it does. So being on Hard Knocks this season, does that have anything to do with the fact that you were not on the year that Michael Sam was drafted?
No, I don't think so at all. I think the reason we're on this year, it probably is relatively, could be obvious in that there's a historic move being made here, and by that there's a relocation that can be documented, and it's an interesting relocation in that an original team left, and now they're coming back. So there's a little bit of a homecoming involved, and so I think that's probably why. And there's another formula in who the guys can pick as well, and I think we met those qualifications as well. So I think that formula, along with that very interesting content in terms of relocation, in terms of a team coming home, is probably the reason we're on for the 2016 season.
Last time we spoke to you, it was the day of the last game, as it turned out, in the history of St. Louis for the Rams. And you talked about how the quarterback position would be evaluated in this time of year that I'm now talking to you in. I've got a couple questions for you. Did the Rams ever look or contact in the direction of Peyton Manning, Les?
The answer is no, in that he was a Denver Bronco, and they actually played as long as they possibly could into the final Sunday of the season. And I think, to be honest with you, Rich, like most of us in most, we're in this business, but there's a little bit of we're fans as well. I think that when he won that Super Bowl, if you were betting, you bet that, Peyton's going to retire. Basically because of the injuries he had and the age he is and the success he's had. And guess what? You can go out there's no better moment to go out as a Super Bowl champion or on top. So because of all those storms, we never really felt like Peyton Manning was going to be an option for the Los Angeles Rams.
Would he have been one for you? Could he have been one?
I can't answer that because he never, it never got to the point where he was. But I think, here's what I can tell you what we do in this business, though. As an example, there's a lot of ways you acquire players, and some of them are via trades. Some of them, if a player like Peyton were to get cut and now he's free, you definitely have to make sure you do your proper analysis of him and see if he would have been a guy to help us. So if that scenario would occur, we would have definitely done our due diligence.
And in terms of somebody who has been available for the last couple of weeks, who just signed with Cleveland today, and somebody who you did have the draft rights to draft back in the day and traded him to Washington, did you ever look in the direction of Robert Griffin? Les?
We're definitely aware that Robert was, excuse me, he was out there. He was a free agent along with some other QBs, and we've made our decision to hold pat, and I think I said it the other day, and I'll stress to you, when we come in for OTAs, Case is going to get the first snap at QB, and that's OTAs. But I'll take us through our QB situation. I think he earned that. He earned that right to take that snap. I think you were at one of his, a good game for Case that night, Thursday night, back at the Edward Jones Dome. We did draft a kid last year in the third round, Sean Mannion, and that's not sexy to talk about now, but I think over the last few years there's definitely been some success stories with second and third round QBs in our league, and they become a little sexier after the fact. And hey, there's this thing called the draft coming up, and we'll try to analyze that whole situation. And then going back to free agency, though, last year we did add Nick Foles via trade, which is similar to free agency. And I do think you can always, especially at the QB position, look for something new. But that's a tough transition when you just keep bringing in guys that are new, and you're also going through a transition on your offensive staff. So you want to keep continuity there at that position as best you can.
Less than the minute I have left, when somebody reads the article today with the headline of "League Made Deal with Rams to Draft Sam," what would you want that person who reads that headline to think or know?
That's definitely an untrue headline. That is not true. So we'll put it in the headline of this one's out there just to get clicked.
Okay, Les, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You be well. That's Les Snead, general manager of the Los Angeles Rams, here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.